Tell me something. Why do you think Jamaica tends to lag behind other economies, including our Caribbean neighbors, when it comes to its economic growth and development? Now, don't get me wrong, there have been some victories. According to worldbank.org, the economy is expected to make a 1.7% expansion in 2025 and has made some strides in reducing public debt. But Jamaica's overall economic growth has been exceptionally slow for decades, even in comparison to other Caribbean countries, and has low productivity across multiple sectors, and has a deficit in human capital, meaning a shortage of a skilled labor force. Crime and violence still plague the country. The Jamaican government has tried quick fixes for our economic problems and slow development by inviting foreign companies to set up shop in the country. But in order to do that, the government uses tax breaks and exemptions as an incentive. Jamaica's business income tax rate is about 25% for most companies, but foreign corporations can have rates as low as 7.5%. Jamaica has foreign telecommunications companies like Digicel and Flow, other companies like DHL, Huawei, and Citibank. And even with all these foreign businesses in the country, why such slow economic growth? On top of the fact that the earnings these companies make aren't being recirculated back into the country because of tax exemptions, but because of the dearth of high-skilled labor in Jamaica, these companies end up not wanting to hire Jamaicans because of lack of competency and skill, and so hire their own workers from their own countries. Jamaica has given several road construction contracts to Chinese companies like CHEC to develop highways, but as you can see, the Chinese companies who build these roads import their own Chinese workers and don't hire Jamaicans. And not only do these companies that bring in their own workers not want to hire local labor, but because of the crime and violence in the country, they also segregate their foreign workers in private secured gated communities where they won't be at risk of being victims of crime themselves. And this is actually one of the incentives they use to convince their foreign employees that their families will still enjoy safety and good quality of life. The issue plaguing Jamaica right now is crime, violence, and poverty. And these issues cannot be solved with quick fixes. Jamaica continues to have the highest incarceration rate in the Caribbean, and there are many contributing factors, but among the most influential, Jamaica has a culture that glorifies violence, criminality, sexual promiscuity, and Jamaica's crime, violence, and poverty is also being driven by a culture that normalizes the physical, emotional, and sexual abuse of children. There's no way around it, people. Children who are raised violently grow up to become violent adults. There is so much scientific and medical research that shows the effect of abuse on the developing brain of a child. Children who are living in constant fear of beatings or verbal and emotional abuse cannot and do not develop to their full intellectual potential. They struggle academically, they struggle with behavioral problems, psychological disorders, and even learning disabilities. As long as Jamaican culture normalizes the vicious abuse of children, we are essentially shooting ourselves in our own foot. Because these same children enduring constant abuse in all its forms do not develop into the doctors, lawyers, engineers, scientists, and architects we need to advance the country. According to a World Bank funded study, key factors contributing to our lacking skilled labor force is lack of critical thinking and creativity. According to a 2022 PISA assessment, out of 79 countries, Jamaica ranked 61 in reading, 62 in math, and 59th in science. Our children are lagging behind even among other Caribbean countries in terms of intellect and academics. And the children who do succeed academically end up leaving the country because of lack of opportunity. And here's another thing. Why do so many Jamaicans feel the need to flee or migrate to white majority Western countries like the United States, Canada, or parts of Western Europe? This is because as much as you would like to criticize these white majority countries, these countries are technologically, economically and socially more advanced in terms of medical science and infrastructure, in terms of economic opportunities, and in terms of human rights, due process, and rule of law. Now, people will criticize these countries for their systemic racism and xenophobia towards immigrants, and that's not to say that isn't true. But when you have an influx of immigrants who don't want to assimilate, who don't want to adopt the values of the countries they immigrate to, but want to bring the same cultural values that destroyed their own countries there, this is where you get conflict. This is where people will support mass deportations. Because you'll notice that it's not every non-white immigrant group that's facing deportations. East and South Asian communities have managed to economically establish themselves in these countries and have extremely low incarceration rates. And their communities are not plagued with the same level of crime and violence that plagues, say, Jamaican immigrant communities. So what's the answer? The answer clearly cannot be for everyone to become a refugee or migrant and move to wealthier white majority countries. The answer is for policymakers to invest in the protection of Jamaica's most vulnerable groups, starting with our children. The answer is to invest in education and to also invest in families and literally educate parents in the proper way of raising their children for the best outcomes. Jamaica also needs a cultural overhaul. We need to let go of the dancehall music and entertainment that promotes sexual violence, promiscuity, and criminality. Jamaica still has some of the highest HIV rates in the Caribbean region, and the Caribbean has the second highest HIV prevalence globally after sub-Saharan Africa. Everyone's seeing what's happening in the criminal trial of Sean P. Diddy Combs, but no one should be surprised. The same toxic masculinity that Puff Daddy had in his music videos promoting materialism, womanizing, substance use, and crime and violence is the same toxic masculinity we see in our own local entertainment. And that is because these values do not just plague Jamaica, but the entire African diaspora. The Jamaican government needs to work with the local Christian churches who are already doing so much to get persons to leave hedonistic lifestyles behind and assist these churches in rehabilitating those communities. The government also needs to work with foreign aid agencies. I mean, good luck with that now that Trump has gotten rid of USAID. But the government needs to work with these agencies, both secular and faith-based, to work with communities in lowering the crime rate and rates of other issues like child abuse, domestic violence, substance use, and mental health. Jamaican politicians also need to release their ties to organized crime and dismantle the drug-don garrisons that terrify their own residents. And to people who don't have the same power, wealth, or social status of politicians, there's power that you have too. Stop glorifying values that promote criminality, substance use, sexual violence, and the abuse of children that is self-sabotaging our own country. When you see persons listening to dancehall music or soca that promotes promiscuity, have a conversation with them. When you see persons telling and laughing at dirty jokes, tell them it's not funny. When you see bus drivers blasting music with sexually explicit lyrics, with children riding as passengers in their buses trying to get to school, tell them to turn it off, because it starts with something small. People, the Bible says evil communication corrupts good character. The answer is not just about giving foreign companies tax breaks to set up shop or migrating to wealthier white majority countries. It's about making the transformation in Jamaica that's needed and letting go of cultural values that sabotage our own future.